Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club, and I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
And we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 57, and it's our commentary on the special event hosted by Samsung, the Samsung Unpacked, Galaxy Unpacked April 2021 event, and we're recording this on April 21st, 2021. And to talk about this show that they put on and the laptops that they announced, we have Art Gelwix, our Samsung aficionado, joining us today. Art Gelwix is a productivity and collaboration consultant. He's also a blogger at theideapump.com, and he's the host of the Being Productive podcast. And of course, he joins us on Productivity Cast regularly. And so welcome to the show, Art.
Hey guys, how you doing today?
Good morning.
Doing well, doing well.
Some gear?
Yes, we're very excited.
Gear. It's as good as a cup of coffee, almost.
All right, let us jump into and unpack the Unpacked. And what did you think about the production value of the event now that we've had nearly a year of pandemic-focused entertainment virtually? And what was the most interesting thing you thought about the show? And then we'll get into the particulars about the announcements.
I like the fact that this is the third Unpacked event they've done this year. They've been consistent in the design, consistent in the narrative and the pacing. It was an hour. They stuck to an hour. You kind of knew what you were getting. You know, it's like watching an episode of TV. You knew it 45 minutes in, you were through the big stuff and they were starting to wrap up the story. So I believe they got their messaging across very clearly. They were very good at getting the core message across, and we'll talk about that quite a bit. There was one underlying message, which I think is going to become the bigger narrative as we finish out 2021 and move into the next couple of years. They've really doubled down on one core concept. I think it's going to make a big difference. Visually, it was fine. I mean, it had the same normal displays and interactions, which I thought were pretty cool. The system breakdowns, because this was a hardware-focused event, showing how the components were put together. That was all interesting. I mean, it was like an episode of How's It Made, but it was still fun to watch, and it was engaging. It was one of those things that often you watch these types of things, and about 20 minutes in, you're like, okay, guys, come on, get to the good stuff. But this was something that you could keep it running and you could go through and it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So I think they did a good job. I'd give them probably an A-. So
I give them an 8 out of 10 on this event. And the reasons I give them what I think is a pretty high score in being able to do a virtual event is that they really kept a clean, consistent narrative throughout the entire event. They kept saying the same things. The brand messaging was on target here. It was a clear message that they wanted to be able to turn this, experience on the smartphone into the experience of a PC and giving you all of the benefits of having a thin, lightweight, all-day running device. And I just felt like all of the things they were doing throughout the event really helped me understand better what they were trying to sell in terms of value, not in terms of product. And it's so important for them to be able to do that, any business to be able to do that. But they were just really, this was a masterclass in just what is in essence a boring company, right? Samsung is an OEM, they are just building products that are usually supposed to fade into the background. We use them every day, and so they become somewhat of a commodity, and they're really trying to spice it up a la Apple. And so I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely, Samsung's been along the ecosystem mindset for a long time. I mean, Samsung is a much more diverse company than an Apple or pretty much anybody else in the tech sector, because they make pretty much everything.
Can Apple say? Can Apple say they make toilets?
No, washing machines.
Samsung
all that
does.
Stuff. I got Samsung washing machines downstairs. So that type of thing, thinking about that ecosystem play, they had one question they asked throughout this entire thing: why can't a PC be more like a smartphone? And it sounds almost like a trite marketing type of question, but I think there's a deeper concept to that. And it's a recognition that the smartphone devices that we have now, not just for Samsung, but across the board, have reached, equaled, and in many cases surpassed the laptop capabilities. The power, the processors, the screens, the memory. I mean, I think about the phone that I have. It's more powerful than my laptop. Flat out, spec to spec comparison. It is a more powerful device. So I think it's an extremely valid question that they ask. And as we look at these three products that four technically, products that they pushed out during this event, you can see that thinking going all the way through everything they've done in these devices. They've really started to say, can we blur that line? Can we make this the quote Samsung experience rather than just, here's a bunch of hardware that we sell, we'd like you to buy all of it.
And I also have to say that they, in the lead up, their trailer to the show was that box traveling from place to place to place to bring the Galaxy Book to the residence of the new owner. And it's just a really great tie-in that they brought the box in as the first image you see to like open up the event and bring the Galaxy Book to, like, they thought of all of the details. And these are the kinds of things that I think every product business should be thinking about, and especially in the productivity space, where most often than not, we're much more function than form, and they have really brought a lot of that form to the function here, and I really, really appreciated that component about it.
Yeah, it's neat seeing. We'll have the comparisons between Apple and Samsung forever, but it's neat seeing these two companies playing against each other. And it's forcing both of them to up their game. And to me, that's always a good thing, because you always get better stuff when you have competition. This truly, I believe, I can't think of another company aside from Samsung that plays in the same space that Apple does, though. I mean, at least not with hardware or software and things like that. I can't think of anybody.
No, I believe that your next contenders would have been Microsoft and Google, and they both have floundered, really. Other than the Surface line, Microsoft really has not been able to do mobile and desktop well in the hardware space, and Google has locked down really the home, assistant space, IoT in the home. Obviously Amazon has competition there as well, and I guess Amazon with their Fire tablets has done some stuff, but nothing near the breadth of what we're talking about in terms of Samsung and Apple. So,
no, and I think it was interesting. I was expecting for some moments, and then now we are going to listen to John Ive coming out. It was really a
maybe he was freelancing.
Maybe he was freelancing. I don't know, but out of the seriousness, they really put a really good event. The graphics were good. I mean, it felt out of the playbook of Apple in a good way. I'm meaning that in a good way. They really are trying to make an ecosystem that I don't think anybody have right now. Even Microsoft with their phone or their foldable thing and the Surface and all this, they don't have it. It's really right now Samsung and Apple, the only two companies who are trying to offer this really good real integration for everything, and so it's really really interesting.
And you could see just as soon as the presentation started, the double down into the idea that nothing should be locked to a desktop, which is a little ironic when you look at the last Apple event, which released the new, whatever they were, the iMacs or whatever, Emacs or PCs, whatever they were. I'm going to really get myself in trouble with the Apple users, but that's okay. So it's not locked down. They didn't promote monitors. They didn't promote physical devices that, big keyboards that were stuck. Everything was around being able to work anywhere, which to me, again, is a really smart thing for them to be focusing on, because that's the world we're dealing with right now, is that work anywhere environment. And this stuff is designed to fit into that hand in glove.
So I want to touch on really the primary message that TM Rowe and the team were really talking about here, which is these three components of mobility, connectivity, and continuity. And you brought up one of those main points, Art, around the idea of having an experience that doesn't really matter where you are, right? I should be able to work anywhere. And that continuity perspective really did make its way into it. And so the first part was mobility, which is bringing the smartphone to the PC form factor. And I think they effectively conveyed that in the message. And we'll talk about the 3-4 products as we go forward. Connectivity is that they brought Wi-Fi 6, the custom Bluetooth enablement, still don't know what that is. And I've done a bit of research on that. I still don't know what Intel did there. And then a capability for 5G LTE on these devices. Basically, it's a really big smartphone. And so putting a SIM inside the device is obviously a natural extension. We've had this over the past 10 years. It's not like we haven't had other laptops with with some kind of data connection to it. But the idea that they're just baked in was pretty, I think, an important perspective here.
It was interesting as they were talking through the build planning and they discussing things like the motherboard design. They flat out said, we took concepts from the smartphone and put them in the laptops. The configuration, the 5G chip, the board layer design, all of that. They're taking those learnings from those mobile devices and saying, okay, can we put them in something bigger? Can we take advantage of all that skill set that we've got now? And I think this is one of the few times I've seen a company start from the phone side and work back into the laptops. I mean, we've seen, places like Microsoft that go the other direction. We've seen, places like Google who kind of come at it sideways. Microsoft, or Samsung rather, is the first one to really say, look, we've got these crazy smartphones. Can we use that intelligence and design to educate the builders of our laptops? And I think we're seeing a lot of that benefit, talking about thicknesses of 1 millimeter. It changes in manufacturing methods to reflect learnings from the space. I think it's a good thing. Time will tell if it's going to be reliable and if it's going to work, and we're going to see the performance that they're claiming. But in a core concept, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, so they announced the Galaxy Book, the Galaxy Book Pro 360, the Galaxy Pro, the Galaxy Book Pro 360, and the Galaxy Book Odyssey. And so we're gonna talk about each of these individually, but in essence, the first is the Galaxy Book. What did you like about the Galaxy Book? What were your thoughts regarding the Galaxy Book?
I like the fact of how they introduced it, actually, because they introduced the Book Pro and the Pro 360 first, and then they came back to the Book. And the Galaxy Book actually seems to be targeted as, I don't want to say their entry-level device, but it's their base level device, cost of entry. And even that, from a design and capability standpoint, it carried over all of those key functionality. The Galaxy Book out the door has LTE connectivity available to it, which to me is like, okay, guys, I mean, if your bottom of the line device can support wireless connectivity like that, you're obviously all in on this concept. The design aesthetic was solid. Colors, I'm not even going to worry about the colors anymore, because unless they do Mystic Bronze and everything, I don't want to know about it. But yeah, I want everything the same color, and I'm not getting it, and I'm not happy. That's a whole different thing. But that device, at its price point, I would say I wouldn't say it's a game changer, but I think it has interjected itself into every conversation about buying a PC now.
Yeah, so this is I'm reading off of specs here. So the screen's 15.6 inches, 920 by 1080. It starts at $549 for the base model, and then you go up to the $649 with LTE. And
just start with that price, though. Starting at a $549 price means that it takes on every tablet, it takes on every PC out there, because there's very few that have that same set of power specs at that level. I mean, we're still talking about an Evo i7 processor in it, I believe. I mean, it's still an 11th generation processor. It's running a 65 watt charger. Or no, this one is this one a 65 or 135 watt? I got a little confused with that when they were showing their screens.
I thought they were all the same.
Well, they all use a USB-C connection.
Yep.
But the nice thing is it is a gallium nitride charger, which means lighter.
Yes. It's smaller. Yep.
And again, this goes back to that whole core concept. All of this is designed to be put into a bag lightly. Minimum footprint. I think the total was 1 kilogram.
With the
for
charger.
Everything. With the charger, with the cable, with the laptop. That's not bad. And like I said, that price point, I'm really hard pressed to beat that price point as a basic way to get into getting one of these devices in hand. What was interesting too is they spent a little time talking about the keypad, the fact that the keyboard has a modified key travel. It's a 1 millimeter key travel, but it's designed to be a high touch, high responsive keyboard and
quiet.
Well, it's got to be. But again, let's think about this messaging. We have completed almost an entire year of video conferencing, and half of the time on a video conference, you hear keys clacking. Matter of fact, so many companies like Zoom and Microsoft have gone through and embedded noise canceling functionality into their software. When Samsung was talking about it, they're talking about how they built it into their machines as part of the broadcasting or the recording capability. So definitely interesting. The battery life sounds great.
Yeah, it was great how they talked about the dual microphone situation and the noise canceling technology to be able to, really make these, better calls and video meetings. And so I love that. So it does have the 11th generation Intel. And so it depends on which market you're in, whether it's the i3, i5, or i7. But they noted the i7 on screen here. And there is up to a terabyte of storage, SSD. And you can get them in, varying versions of memory up to 16 gigabytes, and then the LP DDR4X. And so, it comes with a bunch of ports. I mean, I was really impressed with the number of ports that it provides. Yeah. Let me just bring this up here. So here we have micro SD for being able to put in a micro SD card in. You've got USB 3.2. You've got
that's the Book Pro you're showing. Because it's got the Thunderbolt 4. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct. So think about this being the Galaxy Book minus that Thunderbolt 4 port.
Right.
Then you have mic, HDMI, and USB Type-C. Mm-hmm. So you get quite a lot of...
Yeah, I got to say, I mean, we think about the portability and the mobility aspect of it. You never have enough ports. You always got to be able to plug into something. And the fact that those are built in, that you're not schlepping around a hub to be able to provide that connectivity is a big step. The fact that they've standardized their power on USB-C, not only just for these devices, but it's now across their entire line. So I was doing the math yesterday. You could have a Galaxy Note or a Galaxy Book, a S7 tablet. You could have your Note 20 phone. You could have your Galaxy Buds earbuds, you could have your Samsung Galaxy Watch and carry one charger. Only have one to fool with and one cable. I mean, that, as a guy who's spent time living out of his backpack, that's huge. That
Absolutely.
Makes life so much easier.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm really pleased with their ability to get all of this stuff going. There's a fingerprint reader on the power button, so from a security perspective, you can biometric in, and Dolby Atmos for audio, which is pretty great because they kind of showed it. I don't know what the actual audio is going to sound like, but they said it's supposed to sound good.
On the Samsung phones, Dolby Atmos is available, and it really makes an impact with headphones and all. So again, if they're carrying over the things that they have learned on the smartphone platform into the laptop, I have high expectations for that audio quality. If I'm going to be watching a video on there, I want to hear the pew pew of the TIE fighters. So,
all right. Anything else about the Galaxy Book? I would say the HDMI component. We talked about this before we started recording, but its ability to be able to connect up to was that only on the Pro or was that on the Galaxy Book?
I think that's only on the Pro. I
Okay,
think
yeah.
on the regular Galaxy Book, I think it's just normal monitor connections. But
Well, let's move on to the Pro then. So we
Yeah.
go from $549 up to a $999 price point at the 13-inch Galaxy Book Pro, and then the 15-inch Galaxy Book Pro is $1099. And while we were talking about it, I guess is the next thing is the HDMI gives you up to 3 monitors to be able to connect to that Pro series, and that's just phenomenal. Being able to have that little light device connect or thin device be able to connect to 3 monitors. That's just going to be a powerful feature for a lot of people.
That's a workstation. There's no question in my mind. That's a full workstation. I imagine trying to set this up on your desk and you wind up buying a new desk because you can't hold all the monitors. The laptop's great, but you can support so much traffic capability through that HDMI port. And if it's going to be that responsive, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious to hear about this in the wild once it goes live and people start getting them in their hands.
I don't know how many people will actually work off of 3 monitors. I mean, I know some who would. That's a lot of stuff to look at. I'll be honest with you. Now, the Pro,
that is a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's although if you're going to run your spreadsheet on one, your collaboration on the other, and Netflix on the third, I guess you're okay.
Hey, you can do it that way, but no, I wanted to pinpoint that I agree the Galaxy Book price points is incredible, but the Pro wasn't bad priced either.
No,
I mean
none of them are.
You can go with that price, and really there is not a lot of things with at least what I understood were the specs and the speed and all that at that price point in the market, and that look high end, because that was one of the things, at least on what I saw. They look really high end. They don't look cheap, plasticky. They are, but they don't look. They look in comparison to a Surface, they side to side. So that was really interesting for the price point.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're going to see is, again, that price point is point of entry, but it really places itself in an excellent point of contention against anything else in the market. I mean, I was going to go and do a quick search on Amazon, but I can guarantee at that price point, we're looking at 2 or 3 year old laptops, not the newest and latest and greatest out there in the space. So now they did say that the Galaxy Book Pro machines come in either a 15.6 inch or a 13.3 inch screen layout, which I like the idea. I like the idea of the smaller screen layout if you need an ultra portable style machine. I think that's a good one. I did not see if the 13.3 comes in a 3x2 format. So I'm curious about that because I've become a bit of a fan of the 3x2 format. I do enjoy it, but that's minor. It's all aluminum, which is, to me, that's a big thing. Again, at this price point, we're talking about a device that isn't made out of plastic casings to save weight. They've done some specific milling to actually reduce weight and increase strength. They talked about that specifically in the presentation, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, they went through the whole make of it. Yeah.
And I think that may come from those learnings from the smartphone space. If you're going to make it thin, you got to make it strong or else it's going to break. I mean, with a smartphone, you're talking about something maybe 4 inches, 6 inches long. This, you're talking something 15 inches wide. That's just a thin slab of aluminum. Doesn't take much to bend or break that or snap some of the internal components. So
what we're going to see now is a whole bunch of YouTube videos doing drop tests of Samsung Galaxy.
Does it bend? Does it blend? And how do they support it? Which, not to jump ahead, the fact that Samsung is again offering something that Microsoft or Apple already does, their Samsung Care Plus. They're recognizing that these things are going to be out in the real world. They're going to get beaten, abused, and need to be maintained. So I thought that was interesting. As we said, the Thunderbolt 4, which I think is a great thing. They're running AMOLED displays, and on the 360, they're running a Super AMOLED display, which, again, those learnings from the mobile space. And the 360, which we'll talk about a little bit more, comes with an S Pen. So again, they're doubling down into that capability. But it's also how they position the device. They were very clear about how the devices are being targeted. So.
Yeah, so the interesting thing here is that the two Pros are, as you said, they're AMOLED 13.3 1920 by 1080, and then 15.6 inch 1920 by 1080 also. So they keep same aspect ratios on both sizes. And again, they're really pushing the 11th gen Intel. They even had Intel in the presentation to talk about their partnership. This, I think, was a huge win for Intel. They have been battered by the Apple Silicon, kind of taking away their pride and joy of being able to build for Apple. This was a way for them to be able to get a win this year by doing this partnership with Samsung, I think.
Yeah, it was definitely Intel going, hey guys, we're still relevant. So we'll see how well this processor works. I mean, there's always going to be the benchmarks comparisons, and this runs faster than that. But we all know at this level of device, the differences between them in what we actually recognize as performance is almost negligible. I mean, it's literally just, ruler sizing. So.
Yeah, so I think we'll talk a little bit more about the Samsung Intel Microsoft partnership, this co-marketing program they've developed, but I think this is a really good component of it. Okay, anything else about the Book Pro?
The Book Pro is a standard clamshell design, but it does lay back to 180 degrees, which I have never found a purpose for. But okay, it can lean back. It is that high visibility display, and this is something I thought was actually kind of funny. Well, cute funny that they did in the presentation. They took you through the museum of old laptops, and they showed you, old laptops where you couldn't see them in the daylight, and ones that had massive weight and no touch screen and things like that, and where it had come from. So I thought it was a little cheeky on their part, but it was still, I think, a nice filler for them to show that, yeah, this is not your grandfather's laptop.
Yeah, on balance, I think the Book Pro in either 13.3 or 15.6 is really the best of breed in this lineup of products they put out today. Balances value, price, really, really well. And so if I were going to get one of them, this would probably be it. I love the fact that it's touchscreen. I love the fact that it has the clamshell design, that it's just a clean fit. Everything about it really feels looks like it will feel right in a work environment. Yeah,
the Book Pro is definitely targeted to your spreadsheet crowd. I mean, this is the business device, the business class device. They clearly targeted that to that audience, and the 360 to your creative audience. So, another thing though, here's one more thing. They did mention briefly, if you watched, that you could take a S7 tablet or one of their Tab S7 Pluses, whatever, and use it as a second screen and use the S Pen capability on it to control both devices. I thought that was really intriguing because I have yet to see anybody really play that space, but man, does that open up some opportunities to have a multi-level device, creative and business focus. I like that idea. And to me, that would be a reason why I would go buy an S7 Plus tablet, because I would have that capability plus this workhorse, and I wouldn't be locked into just a 2-in-1 design. I love my 2-in-1s, don't get me wrong. But if I'm going to have two devices, this opens up a real neat opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. The S7, the S Pen being able to extend on to
you could use that as the control
using
for
the
the
second
application.
screen feature.
Yeah, I think that was the case. If nothing else, you were using it as a dual screen and the touch capability on the tablet. I don't know if it crossed back over to the other machine, but whatever app you were running on that S7 tab from the main machine, the S Pen acted as your mouse control. So if you were doing video design or editing or something like that, that's pretty solid in my book.
Okay, the reason I took this event down by 10 points is that those stupid stickers are back. They put those Intel stickers on the device.
Yeah, I saw that, and they showed it twice. I'm like, guys, come on. We've been scraping those bloody things off for years.
I was like, I was like, demerit. I was immediately like, come on, I cannot have these.
That's not Samsung's fault. That's the Intel's fault. They're not going to get rid of those because, hey, guys, we're still relevant. So
Oh, geez. Yeah. All right. So let's run along then from the Galaxy Book Pros along to the Galaxy Book Odyssey. So now I'm sorry, Pros 360. Pros 360.
the
Let's talk about the
360
Pro 360.
yeah. The
So
360 is our 2-in-1. And I thought it was interesting because the 2-in-1 design, again, that's that full rotation. You can use it in tent mode, you can use it in lean back mode, you can use it in any number of different modes. But their messaging really targeted that around the creatives and the creative mindset. It includes an S Pen, like I mentioned earlier. That's standard. And it's a big S Pen. It's not a little one. It's a full size. So it's neat to see that they've got the thinking around this device targeted for that audience. But, and this is what I like, supports 5G. This isn't an LTE device. Now, I think that was the same on the Pro as well. But supporting Wi-Fi 6E, custom Bluetooth, which we still have no idea what that is, and 5G support. Guess what, folks? We're working out of the house. We're getting to other locations and not noticing the difference. Now, it's all dependent on 5G infrastructure and things like that, but still, a device itself, a laptop supporting 5G capability natively, that's the true merger of mobile and PC.
yeah, so the Galaxy Book Pro 360 comes in at $11.99 to start, and then the 15-inch, the 15.5 inch, 15.6 inch one comes in at $12.99 starting, and it's the 13.3 inch that has 5G, and I don't believe the 5.6 has 5G built into it, but presumably if you've got a 15.6 inch device, you're not necessarily taking that out.
And it makes sense. If you have to pick one of the two to put it in, you put it in the more portable one.
Absolutely.
I totally get that.
Yeah. So otherwise, all the other specs are pretty similar to the other ones in terms of processor, graphics, parity, and so on and so forth. The same number of ports, if I'm reading correctly, which is amazing, right? Having a portable device, throw it into tablet mode, and you still have the same ports to be able to utilize. I think about myself being on the road and having to plug into lots and lots of projectors. Some of them are ancient. And so being able to have a portable device where you can plug HDMI in with no problem, oh man, that just sounds like a dream. And so the number of dongles, it's just...
It will be fun to build an everyday carry bag around this device to see how much stuff you could actually get rid of. So,
all right.
Well,
what else about... Go for it, Augusto.
Sorry, and that's exactly what they did. So there are two things that are really interesting. One of them we already mentioned, but I want to mention it again. This is the first time I hear a non-Apple company, talking about, no, we took the cell phone, and from the cell phone, we went and built this. And I think that's a really important shift that one can hope the others are going to follow, because cell phone, for good or for bad, that's the main device for 90% of the world. When you build it the other way, that's a big thing. But second, it's showing how much power those cell phones have now that we are going to follow.
Has Apple even done that? Because Apple, to my knowledge, has never outright said that our PCs, and I'll just use the generic term, are being influenced and designed by our phones. They've always had those two. It's the iPads that have been influenced by the phone devices, but they've never taken it all the way up the channel. And I think this is truly the first company who said across the board, these little things in our pockets are the most powerful things we have out there. It would be foolish of us to not allow them to influence everything we're doing. So,
no, I think that was incredibly powerful, and it's incredibly exciting to see coming from there how we are really getting to the laptop, and Samsung has the DeX, as a platform that for playing with some of these things. So it's really interesting. I am not going to put a Windows machine on my desk, but that said, if I need to put one, this will be a good option. This will be something that I was excited looking at it. I was excited about what they were building until they put the Windows operating system. But the hardware per se was incredibly exciting on what they are building.
You mentioned DeX there, and I thought that was one of the things that jumped out at me is they never mentioned it. And I think that was by design because they didn't want to cloud the conversation. But what they did talk about, and we'll dig into this more a little later, I'm sure, is a lot of the Microsoft integrations. And one of the things they did spend quite a bit of time talking about was your phone. And I use your phone on a daily basis. I use it all the time connected to my Samsung phone. And it's a wonderful application. It just opens up capabilities that I can't get through other mechanisms. So again, this was a good example of Samsung staying on message and not confusing and not crowding these things. If we go all the way back to the beginning, I would love to see more announcements like this, where companies get the message. The virtual messaging, I think, works for companies because it gives them an opportunity to get this stuff straight and nobody go off script and really hone what they're going to provide and what they're going to talk to. This, I think, is a good example of that.
And the future is collaboration, and we cannot collaborate if the companies that are providing us with the hardware and the software to collaborate are not collaborating themselves. So I hope they're hearing the message, and certainly Samsung, Microsoft, Intel are, and hint, hint, Apple. We need to be able to integrate our technology across the board, and wherever we're working. One of the reasons why I chose Google for good or for ill as my infrastructure for most of my work and my home world was because of that fact. No matter what hardware I'm on, I'm capable of using my Google Workspace and Google accounts to be able to be productive. And if Samsung and Microsoft and Apple were to play nice together, the hardware would kind of melt away, right? I would still buy the hardware. We're still going to enjoy using all of the various preferential marginal components as the mechanism for talking between them, but their interoperability would really bring forward everybody's productivity. And I feel like them locking themselves into the ecosystem, yes, it gives them a greater edge in terms of security and privacy, in terms of branding. But the real component here is that the more we can work together across no matter what device we're on, the better off we are. I just want to close out any specs on close out specs on the next product, which is the Galaxy Book Odyssey, and then I want to come back to this conversation around the Microsoft collaboration.
This was their one more thing moment.
Oh,
this is when they threw this one up there. I'm like, oh, that's just not fair.
Absolutely. So this one is basically akin to the Galaxy Book Pro, except that they have upgraded the processor and really gave you a gaming PC.
Yep. So
the components that are really interesting here. So it starts at $13.99 as its starting price point USD. You got a 15.6-inch screen, really nice TFT LCD screen at 1920 by 1080, and 11th generation Intel i5 or i7, depending upon your market. They put in the graphics card. It's an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050, and just like really, really nice graphics card. You've got up to a terabyte of storage as well, and you can go all the way up to 32 gigabytes of DDR4X RAM in that. So that's amazing.
A couple other specs that I thought were really interesting. One, it's running a 135 watt charger, so it's pulling the power. And they spent quite a bit of time talking about how they redesigned the heatsink mechanisms within this. They literally gave us an engineering breakdown. Dual fans, redesigned, larger radius on the fans, slimmed down the heatsink channels to keep that temperature down while you're running high-end process. It's absolutely the gold standard on this of their line for products to play in that space. What jumped at me the most is 2 times, very subtly, they mentioned Xbox Game Pass and their integration with Microsoft and their recognition that Microsoft contains all the other pieces that they need to be that massive ecosystem. The Game Pass piece of this, I think, is huge because Microsoft is making that push into being able to run off of cloud-based games. I run Game Pass all the time. I run it off of my phone where I can play games. I run it off my PC. And just the fact that they're saying, okay, we want to build a machine that's going to run these optimally. I think that's excellent. I think that's just the way they need to package this stuff together. So good on them.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. They mentioned a number of different components when it came to this. Mentioned the Game Pass. I think the other component about this particular model is that it actually has an RJ45, so you can connect Ethernet to it, so you can physically plug into the device. I thought that was really powerful. And this one comes in at around 4 pounds. You said it had the larger power brick, 83 watt hour battery. So really, really, good size battery. And so it's a pretty powerful device. That this one has Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, and the and gigabit Ethernet port, as I said. So you get a lot of capability in what is supposed to be your gaming rig, right? You're supposed to be able to do all the gaming on that device. So I was really pleased with the Galaxy Book Odyssey, and I almost thought that's probably the best laptop of the devices they mentioned, but price for value, I ended up falling on the Pro 13 or 15 inch models because of just price and value.
What
Most people don't need an Ethernet port.
Right. What intrigues me a little bit, though, is when you look at the price points of across the range, the high-end price point of the Odyssey running for basically $1,400. You can get 2.5 Galaxy books for that. And it's not a reduction in 2.5 times the quality of the machine and the power and the capabilities. Yeah, it's not that level, but you're not cutting your capabilities in half or less than half. So that broad price range still means that you're working within a very nice range of specs for performance and capabilities. So they have made it pleasantly difficult to make a decision. So
let's talk about the Galaxy Book Experience portion of the show, because I think there's so many important pieces here about how they have integrated Microsoft into the environment. You talked about your phone and those components as well, and the lack of naming DeX in this process, but really, in essence, they've used a lot of what they've learned in DeX and built this collaboration partnership with Microsoft. What did you think about the idea of being able to, say, synchronize tasks between Microsoft To Do and your Samsung tasks, notes with OneNote? I mean, they really thought this through.
People have been asking quite a while around the Samsung mobile devices, specifically the phones, why is there such a Microsoft footprint? And I think what we're seeing is the Microsoft footprint plan starting to come to fruition. You have the built-in integrations of things like Samsung Notes, a perfect example, which really supports the S Pen. It's a nice design for capturing notes. It is targeted to synchronize with things like OneNote. You've got synchronizing across every device in the ecosystem now. All of those things where you would expect, I need to work with this application or this service, regardless of the device I'm working on. And they've started to really carry that forward. Things like the reminders synchronizing to Microsoft To Do. That's nice. The gallery synchronizing to OneDrive. Every one of these things was a little shot over the bow at Google saying, hey, we can do it. We got it. We do this stuff all the time. What I thought was really interesting is some of the things they've started to pull over, though, that can make things significantly improved, like the SmartThings integration. He talked a lot about SmartThings integration and its capabilities. It was previously only supported on the mobile devices to be able to control things like your lights and things like that. Well, now the SmartThings application has been ported over to the PC environment. So I could be sitting at my computer, pop up the SmartThings app and turn the lights down or change the air conditioner. And you think that's a little thing. I mean, it's like, okay, fine, big deal. That's a huge convenience. And that's where these things start to pick up use. It becomes that secondary, I'm just going to do that. And because I can just do that, I can do that time and time again. Things like Quick Share, which have been available within the ecosystem for a little while, where it's kind of like AirDrop on Apple. Quick Share is one of those things that I think is nice. It just means that everybody's got to be running Samsung gear to be able to utilize Quick Share. I don't know if I can load Quick Share on a different Android device. I don't think I can yet. but I would not be surprised if that comes. And
But I will, and that is fine. I mean, you can only run AirDrop on the Mac, but when you are across Apple people, it is ridiculously powerful. So what that is making Samsung, hey, we are going to be the cool players of the PC world. We are going to be the cool kids of the block now. And well, if you don't have a Samsung, it's good, but you are not as cool as we are. That is the game again Apple has been playing for a while. You know,
Right.
if you want AirDrop, hey, get an iPhone device. Yeah.
As a lifelong green bubble,
Yeah.
I mean, I completely get it. And it'll be interesting to see it. Where I think the difference comes in this is because Apple has that locked ecosystem. It's a bubble. There are no competitors to Apple with Apple operating systems or equivalents. Samsung doesn't have that. There are lots of Android companies out there. There are tons of Windows hardware manufacturers out there. So the question they get into is, if we're going to draw you into our ecosystem, we've got to provide a crazy level of either integration, value, or desire for you to really commit to using our stuff across the board. And I think we're starting to see that. Some of the things, quick search, nice feature, searches across the device content. Again, not critical. Will we see it being a game changer? Probably not. But it's one of those things that's like, yeah, if you use it, it's useful.
No, but I think that the game changer is that beginning of that ecosystem, because really, I have always said this. One of the reasons I love working on my devices is doesn't matter which iPad I grab, the iPhone, and to a certain extent the Mac, okay, and I will find the same things, especially on the iPhones and iPads. If Samsung replicate that, now it comes to the person in that ecosystem is why I'm going to buy a Surface or an HP or anything else when this integrate so good together.
I will note that for anybody who is and wants something similar to QuickShare on their Windows devices or Mac devices, this is for Windows and Mac, try out Command E. It's a fantastic program. I think it's at getcommande.com, the letter E. But like QuickShare is awesome. I thought that the idea here of being able to bring these cohesive experiences was not only useful, like smart things, and do they still require you to have a hub in the smart things world?
No,
they've now decoupled it and given you Zigbee and other.
There are some smart things devices. Matter of fact, we saw that really start to step up with the smart tags release, being able to have non-supported. And they talked about that a little bit during the presentation, how they've expanded the smart things capability to have other devices recognize, even devices off your network recognize that it saw something that got lost and notify accordingly. So being mobile, you lose stuff. And this concept in their ecosystem, smart things being able to support more things outside the Samsung ecosystem creates huge value. Because that's the one thing I don't think you can really lock people into just Samsung devices. You've got to provide, I've got Wise light bulbs all over the place. If I'm going to use smart things, that has to be supported. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to use smart things. So this is
one of my questions about it was, do you need a Samsung phone in order to be able to do a lot of these your phone capabilities, like using an application on the internet? They didn't quite say that affirmatively.
Well, I don't know if it's available on other devices. I do know it's built in to the higher end Samsungs. For example, if you go on the Note 20 Ultra and you swipe down the top controls for all this, there's actually a control in there linked to Windows. And that toggle means that functionality just pops up and you're off and running. I believe you can run it on other devices. I'll have to go back and check. That would be a Microsoft push, much less as a matter of fact, I know you can because I think I did it with a Pixel. I have to go back and look and see. But that link to Windows capability for Android is definitely on the Microsoft side of the fence. The fact that Samsung has said, hey, you know what? We got these Windows PCs. We've got link to Windows capability. We've kind of bought into that. Therefore, we're going to provide it right up top for you. It's a neat little feature. I mean, people, if you haven't played with it or you haven't seen it, just the ability to sit here and in one application on my screen, respond back and forth to text messages without ever leaving Windows. If you're an Apple user, you're going, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, well, guess what? We can do that too now. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
So
It's not out.
no, it's out. It's out.
Yeah. So my concern, of course, is like I want to be able to use Instagram on the desktop and be able to use other applications, but only Samsung to Samsung right now on your phone. And that was where I was curious.
No. Well, I don't know if it's only Samsung to Samsung, but I run the apps Samsung to a Lenovo desktop. So
I'm on a Pixel 5 connected to your phone, and I'm only seeing notifications, messages, photos, and calls.
No,
so I wonder.
Okay, it may be the Samsung. Well, no, because I'm looking at notifications, messages, photos, apps, and calls, and I have my entire collection of apps that are on the phone available. And just to be clear, the way it runs the apps on the desktop is it does basically a screen share off of the phone to the desktop. So you get kind of like a virtual phone for just that app showing up on your desktop. But I have all my apps here, including the little notification bubbles as to how many notifications I have per app. I click on it.
I'm gonna have to play. I'll have to play.
Yeah, it's a little slow to spin up, but as soon as it spins up, like I go through, I'll scroll through my Twitter feed, and often I'll scroll through my Twitter feed using the mobile app for no other reason that's the interface I use so often. That's the one I'm most comfortable with. So
yeah, this is where I see most of the productivity gains in all of these devices, is that the more mobile and desktop become similar for us and they work no matter where we are, whether I'm looking at a big screen, I want to be able to utilize my mobile apps on the desktop. So I want to be able to just have a seamless experience between them. Apple's already started to do that with applications on the Mac OS. I want to see the Windows side as well. And so I'm looking forward to really seeing that. Now, it was nice. I enjoyed watching them demonstrate that and show more of that. Clearly, Microsoft 365 has front billing and a front seat in this particular world, but I'm looking forward to seeing more of the Google products being able to do this same thing, utilizing Android as an ecosystem already, or a flavor of Android ecosystem in that. And the hope is that, they mentioned Bixby.
One time.
Only one time, yes. And all I can think about is Bixby from Star Trek. But the goal, though, is to really just like see a little bit more Google in this, because it just makes sense for them to partner with Google in some of these capabilities. Not that 365 isn't the dominant Office productivity suite out there, but Google Workspace is definitely right behind it. And we need to be able to have support for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of these integration with Google. But I think Samsung's doing what's going to be best for their business, which is integrating with Microsoft for purposes of exchange and the government market as well as enterprise.
Yeah, they've definitely gone all in on the Microsoft side of the equation, but they haven't shut the door on anything else, which I thought was interesting. They didn't say use this instead of that. They say this is where our energy is going. All that other stuff, that's fine. You can do whatever the heck you want with it. But all of this is where you will see the biggest bang for your buck, which I think is a good commitment on their part. Pick a side. Doesn't necessarily mean you pick the wrong side or the right side. Just pick a side and dedicate yourself to making sure that works the best. And then take the learnings from that and allow it to propagate through the other things. Samsung doesn't write operating systems, very clearly. But they have, and you can see when they... This is one of the things I also thought was interesting. When they started to show the applications being migrated from the mobile platform to the PC, they retained continuity of things like the icons and the branding and the user interface. They wanted that consistency, which I think is really key, because the last thing people want, I'm looking at you, Microsoft, different versions of the same applications on different platforms. It's jarring. It's a productivity drain, and it has to be fixed. Personally, I hope Microsoft learns some lessons from the way Samsung is doing this and starts to expand their integration within their own platforms to say, hey, it makes sense to make things work more consistently. They've stumbled a couple of times over the years. They've tried to create mobile interfaces on the desktop. We know that doesn't work. But that doesn't mean you can't learn from both.
They've definitely been paying attention. I'm sure they're taking notes from what
I
Samsung's
hope
doing
so.
here. Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier, but Samsung did bring, inevitably, if you're out on the road with your devices, even if you're at home, you can drop devices, do all kinds of things, and so they made a note regarding Samsung Care Plus, and so this is their version of Apple Care, and Google has their own Google support and for their devices. So they have brought Samsung Care Plus to be able to help folks who are having issues with regard to their devices. I didn't really hear any specs regarding Samsung Care Plus. Did you?
Didn't
Did you
hear any
hear
specs, any price, anything like that. I expect that it will not be the cheapest thing out there. My concern, and this is with the Samsung ecosystem, is not so much around the PC side. Samsung has a problem with success. And when you look at things like appliances and that sort, they get a bad rap of being able to get them serviced. And it's because there are so many of them out there that service requests jack up the volume, and then it's hard to get somebody to take care of them. So if you go shop for a dishwasher or something like that, people downplay the Samsung thing because it's hard to get them serviced. So you have to wonder, is this going to fall in? Are they using that same ecosystem, or are they using something bigger or an alternative channel to support these devices? I think this is kind of like a price of admission type of thing. You got to have some sort of a support plan. So here's our support plan. With that, you get free roadside assistance or something like that. I don't know.
And so, in a nutshell, that ends up being the Galaxy Unpacked event, kind of in a nutshell, for April 2021. Were there any other things you wanted to talk about, gentlemen, before we wrap ourselves up for this episode?
The only thing I would say is I'm very anxiously looking for the hands-on evaluations of this hardware. And the reason why I say that is because when Samsung released the Chromebook 2, or the Galaxy Chromebook 2, whatever the heck it was called, recently, it got some very lukewarm responses because it literally was not a true successor to the previous unit. It was actually slightly downstepped from the previous unit. So I'll be very curious to hear the feedback around the devices themselves. I couldn't care less about the spec comparisons, and all specs are specs. That's fine. But things like the reliability, the keyboard, I'm very curious about, the screen quality, the battery life claims are pretty heavy. I want to hear that in real world.
16 hours. Wow.
Yeah, 16 hours of regular use, 20 hours of video. I mean, that's a lot of binging, and I want to see if that's actually legit. But durability, things like the power supplies, heat, all of those things that really can make a difference for somebody mobile. But I think this is a really good step for them. My curiosity will be what's next. I mean, because now you're starting to play into going back. If they follow their cycle, we're going back to the mobile devices. Next thing we should start to see is the next generation of the foldable devices. And I've heard rumors of them starting to look at a foldable tablet design. I think there was a patent bouncing around where they were looking at a tri-fold tablet design. That capability has intrigued me quite a bit. I went and I looked at one of the Galaxy Folds, just very curious, or the Fold 2, I think, is the current one. And I like the idea of it opened. Really kind of can't get past that little seam in the center, but that's just me because it's just me. Front screen, little narrow. Could it be really useful? Could it be a tablet alternative? Yeah, it could. I still think we're a little early days for it. But how they continue to tie all these together, I think that's going to make or break this. I worry that it's going to fragment. I worry that they're going to lose their messaging. But based on the messaging that they provided today, if they're able to stay true to it, they're going to have a very interesting product line for at least the next 2 to 3 years, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you, Art, for joining us here for the Unpacked event. Where can people keep up to date with you and the work you're doing out there in the world?
As always, you can find me on Twitter at Art Gelwicks, or the best place to come find me is over at the Idea Pump. Anything you want to know that I'm talking about, or anything you want to ask me, that's the place to do it.
Wonderful. Always glad to have you here for these Samsung
My pleasure.
events, Android generally, Windows generally events, so that we can get your perspectives on the matter.
Yes.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for having you, Art. Thanks for being here, Art. All right, Augusto. Then it was us.
Yes.
Another episode under the belt. Augusto Pinaud with Productivity Voice. Thanks so much for joining and helping make these things happen.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's always fun.
All right, everybody. If we missed something that you want us to be able to cover in the show regarding the Galaxy Unpacked event, feel free to let us know. You can head over to anythingbutidle.com and you can click the contact page. You can comment on the episode. This is episode 57, so anythingbutidle.com/057 will go ahead and take you to this episode. You can comment directly on the page. You can also tweet at us or DM us at Anything But Idle on Twitter. So we're available on all the places where we capture those messages. There in the show notes on the episode page are links to the show. I'm going to embed Augusto is going to embed the Galaxy Unpacked April 2021 event directly in the page, so you can watch it there if you'd like to. We'll have this available there to listen to, and there is the text transcripts, so you can see the transcripts below the videos. Just click on the read more link. It'll expand it so you can read the text transcript, but then there is also a PDF download for you as well there. If you enjoyed listening to this, feel free to leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you are listening to the podcast, and that will allow us to create more productivity friends. It really expands our productivity listening community, and so thank you for doing that. With that, we'll see you all next time on Anything But Idle, back on our regular schedule. This is a special episode in the feed, but we will be back on our regular schedule on Monday evening, and so here's to your productive life.